Are you a parent navigating the complexities of co-parenting, family court, or even domestic violence? If you are looking for ways to help protect your children and build a strong and supportive community around you, then look no further. Grey Minds Think Alike is your go-to resource for everything related to the complexities of family life. Join us as we dive into thoughtful conversations with experts and explore practical tips and strategies for tackling the challenges of parenthood in the throes of adversity so that no parent feels alone and every child's safety is protected. Welcome back to Grey Minds Think Alike, where we dive deep into the conversations that matter most with experts who enlighten, inspire, and empower. Today, we're joined by someone whose work has transformed families around the world, Katherine Sellery, founder of the Conscious Parenting Revolution. Katherine teaches parents how to shift from conflict to connection, how to communicate in ways that build emotional safety, and how to raise children without power struggles or fear. Her approach is especially meaningful to so many of our listeners, parents navigating trauma, high conflict, co-parenting, or family court battles who want to break old cycles and create a home where their children feel seen, respected, and safe. And in this episode, we'll explore how communication can become a healing tool, how parents can rebuild trust in the midst of chaos, and why conscious parenting is not about perfection, it's about connection. Hi, Katherine. It's so nice to meet you, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Ali. So good to be here. Yeah, excited to dig into this great topic.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you got a lot to say. So I guess for our listeners new to here, what is the Conscious Parenting Revolution and what inspired you to create it?
Yeah, the revolution started when I started having kids. It was a personal revolution to revolutionize my own approach to parenting based on something other than just the wash and repeat family of origin I had grown up with, and to create something that I felt comfortable with because I was trying to just use other stuff and I didn't feel okay about it. So I just started working on my own parenting, which included going to a lot of trainings. And then over the year, it became just my passion. And I was really compelled to make it the focus of my life, which is what I've been doing now for about 25 years. So it's just amazing how deep the subject is, communication. And then when you've got your kids and your family and all of the triggers and the emotional stuff that gets to show up because it's so much more personal.
Of course.
So there was then all that layer of just really understanding the human dynamics and exercising the opportunity to use the basic minefields as a way to get to a better place and not hurt relationships.
That is always our goal. Now, you say when parents shift how they communicate, everything changes. What does that shift actually look like in an everyday family life?
So there's a couple of, I think, keys. One key is that we see children as trying to get it right. So that's just one fundamental shift, is that with a lot of our discipline, it's as though there's a mindset around could have done better. And that at some level, you're doing this to get at me.
Okay.
And there's like, you're so mad at me. You're now winding me up. And there's a lot of negativity. There's the negative view of children. So the negative view of children and their behaviors and this now conscious awareness that it really is embedded in society, that we look on children. I call it ageism. I mean, we've seen ageism, I think, on both ends of the spectrum. A lot of elderly people talk about ageism and feeling as though they're marginalized, and kids don't have the language for that, but I think they're also marginalized. So there's this other community whose feelings and needs are not taken as seriously because of age. So just within
like
ourselves.
Just saying like they don't know life's, they don't have wisdom. The truth is kids know a lot and they're actually really smart.
And they're also truth tellers. They really are. They'll say the thing that you wish they hadn't because it might sting. And it's kind of, I think it's a gift when people give us straight feedback. And that kind of feedback that can sting a bit, we tend to not appreciate.
Definitely.
But I mean, we tend to not appreciate it, but yet it's really hard to come by because everybody else has been so conditioned to be polite that they will hide that authentic, straightforward feedback, rob us of the opportunity to be really seen like clearly from another person's perspective, which is, I just want to say that's very different from people's judgment of us. I'm not talking about people's judgments. Like, what you think about me is none of my business. In that respect, your judgments and your feedback, which are coming from that place, we don't need to perpetuate that cycle. I'm talking about the kind of clear communication that has a lot of courage behind it, because it is courageous to say to someone, hey, when that happened, I was really hurt. And these were the needs of mine that weren't being met. Would you be willing to have a conversation about that?
So it's a lot about transparency and communication.
Transparency and communicating in a way in which the other person doesn't feel judged. So,
judged or attacked, because sometimes it's a defense.
Exactly. So I think that's part of our day-to-day experience, not just with children, but with other human beings, is that whenever we get triggered, we want to go into defensiveness, and needing to prove is proof of doubt. So just keeping that in mind. Wow, am I trying to prove something? Am I needing to prove something? I think I'm trying to prove something. What is it that I doubt about myself that I'm covering up and has triggered me into defensiveness, because that's all about me. And so again, that takes courage. And it also takes consciousness to be consciously aware when we're moving into the land of defensiveness. And that if we're doing that there's something, methinks he doth protest too much. What's going on for me that I'm landing over there? And at that point, it's time for me to exit and say, I don't know. Right now, I'm noticing my response to this. And I know that this is actually now all about me. So I need to take me away and spend a little time getting in touch with that something in me that's coming out as a result of our interaction, because I've got a field of gold here that I'm going to go mine, and I'm going to work with that. So that's a whole nother perspective.
Absolutely.
To see that as my opportunity to go mine that gold and figure out what's actually going on. So this is the shadow work, I guess. And kids bring out a lot of our shadows.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We were all kids once. So a lot of our life process is all stemming from our childhood. So
yeah. And it takes almost having children, not that other people can't do it for us, but our children are particularly gifted at being able to activate those parts of ourselves that are not otherwise activated by a lot of other people. Like, you have to be close enough and you have to have a certain level of feeling and relationship to be able to have that active response. A stranger rarely is able to do that for us.
You know your kids best and they know you best. So now many of our listeners are parenting through trauma or domestic violence, high conflict custody situations. How can parenting help break cycles of fear-based communication that come from survival mode?
Absolutely. Being able to speak up is compromised, obviously, when you're protecting yourself and you're afraid. And that is probably saving you. So it's not an opportunity for criticism. It's an opportunity for thankfulness. Like, oh, thank God I have this protective instinct that knows how to take care of me. And then how am I able to create enough psychological safety so that I do finally get to say my truth? And so what is necessary to create that psychological safety in order for me to be able to speak to that person in my life that I would otherwise not feel safe to do that? And I think there are a lot of factors, obviously, depending on the type of trauma that is going on, where depending on what that is, obviously space in and of itself, creating a completely different space where that's okay. And then really just, I think the first person is that oxygen mask on yourself, being able to really just be with how horrible that was in a way in which you're getting bigger than what's bugging you. So I guess with any recovery, getting bigger than what's bugging you is absolutely necessary. So that's being grounded and centered and being able to find that feet on the ground, arms on a chair, whatever your practice is, to be able to give you that sense of safety where you feel that you are supported and that you can, in this moment, then be able to turn toward the something without being merged with it. So these are really specific words. So getting bigger than what's bugging you requires being grounded in a state of mind, in a consciousness where you have a bigger sense of self that's bigger than any one particular event or feeling parenting, and then being able to hold the space for those aspects internally that are showing up for us to be present to them.
Well, that's a tall order. I mean, getting to that place. And, for a lot of people, they don't even know how to get to that place because that requires maybe a little meditation or a lot of inner work before you can sort of parent.
Absolutely. You're now doing the parenting of your own inner child. And so that I would almost
how do you start?
Okay, good. I do really recommend meditation. So I would start by finding a meditation practice.
Okay.
And my preference, I teach actually meditation with the Art of Living Foundation. Okay. And what I love about that is that it also provides the breath work. So the breath work with the Art of Living Foundation is such that it heals your nervous system. It's a very, very specific type of breath work. And that it's super well documented. They do a lot of work with vets who have tons and tons of trauma, and also in addiction recovery, where there's also, just a whole bunch of in the prison system, and teaching this particular. So shout out there, wherever you are, there's probably an Art of Living Foundation center near you, and invest in a training, because after you have this, you're able to do it on your own, anywhere, anytime. And it really does work on the vagus nerve. So it is healing the nervous system, because anyone who's experienced trauma, the nervous system requires healing. And so just creating that spaciousness through the practice of meditation will allow there to be more space internal, so that you can begin to do that healing work where you yourself are presence. You become the presence to those aspects of self that are arising within, so that you can hold the space for that inner something in you that is asking for your attention. And you have enough space between it so that it's not like that, right on your face. And you have at least a little tiny bit. And of course, therapy's great.
Sure.
All of those, meditation practice, therapy, yoga, talk therapy. Yes, all of that helping you stay centered so that you can break out of whatever the survival mechanism was that supported you and is probably not supporting you anymore.
Now, what are some signs that maybe a parent needs to be doing this? Like, how do they know? They're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm good. My family's good. What are some things that maybe you should look out for? So they'll be like, maybe I could use a little, conscious parenting tips.
Yeah. Usually, I think people, I don't know what they call it before they hear this framework. So I'll tell you the framework that I use is retaliation, rebellion, and resistance, the 3 R's.
Okay.
3 R's activated in our children. Again, you can say the 3 R's can show up in any human being of any age. And so we can see retaliation, rebellion, and resistance activated. If we're using the context of our kids, then it's usually activated in them when they don't feel seen, heard, and understood from their perspective. So being seen, heard, and understood from their perspective. And this gets triggered because most of us as kids were not seen, heard, and understood from our perspective, right? We're back to being marginalized and invisible. And there's that script about kids should be seen and not heard, or obedient and compliant. And whatever you don't cause me, the adult, any discomfort.
Right.
So when our kids break out of that mindset and didn't get the memo that they're just supposed to be obedient, compliant, have the happy face on, provide harmoniousness in the home, whatever, that rarely happens. They break out of that all the time. And if I'm triggered by it, it's usually because my inner child had to learn another way.
Sure. Yeah.
And how can they go out in this world and insist on having their perspective seen, heard, and understood, right? So we get triggered by it rather than brought to a point of empathy and concern, compassion and understanding. So getting to that place where when a child is misbehaving or acting out, we see it through the context or the eyes of love, understanding, compassion, and empathy. We see it as the tragic expression of an unmet need. If we can see it as a surface presenting problem rather than the problem itself, then we move past the presenting problem, our judgments of it, disrespectful, self-centered, spoiled. There are lots of words and judgments that we can start plastering on top of these behaviors rather than, wow, you're really drowning right now. How can I help you?
Parents are told that respect comes from obedience. So how do you redefine respect, and why is it so important for a child's emotional safety?
Obedience and compliance has nothing to do with consideration.
Okay.
It's a fear-based model. If I want you to do as you're told and to be obedient and compliant, then I have to make you dependent on me for access to activities and goodies that meet your needs. And I also have to be able to cut your access off so that you're afraid of not doing as you're told. That framework of dependency and fear is the weakest framework to build your relationship with your kids on. If you want the foundation to be strong, then it really is built on this idea that everybody has feelings and everybody has needs in this family, regardless of your age. We're cutting through ageism when we break through this very dysfunctional mindset of power over is where respect is born. Respect is not born. Fear is born. And if you've mistaken being afraid of you and doing as I'm told for respecting you, then you've misunderstood the situation. So it's a distinction in understanding that my ability to care and be interested in your well-being is coming from compassion and understanding. My ability to put myself into what would life look like from your perspective? If I'm an out of control parent, right, then I tend to lean heavily into power and control rather than compassion, understanding, and the ability to see your pushback to me and your saying no to me is saying yes to something inside yourself. And my curiosity wants to know what this child is saying yes to. I'm also celebrating the fact that they can say no to me because that does mean free will and also usually psychological safety. Because if you don't feel safe, you can't say no to me. Counselors have said to me, the kids that we worry about the most are the ones that come to school and fall apart because they have to be on their best behavior at home.
Now, how does this sort of approach work when you're either married or going through divorce, co-parenting, and how do you get the other parent sort of on board with the same approach?
When we are dealing with somebody else, we have very little control over what they choose. It's almost impossible. The joy of being a conscious parent who's well equipped with a really strong communication training is that even when the other person is being abominable, we don't need them to have skills for us to be skilled. I just want to de-link it because oftentimes when I'm training people, it's a solo journey and the interest is not so much in getting the other person to the light, but in being so skilled that even in their being in relationship with someone who's not very skilled, that their ability to communicate is not at all affected by this person's failure to be able to communicate well.
Sure. But I have to, imagine that it does create sort of an imbalance if, you're divorced and the child goes from house to house and one parent has this great communication and the other parent has a different method, that child sort of caught in the middle of like, what's right, what's wrong, what do I do? Am I this way? Do I act this way? You sort of want to get that child balance.
I think what happens usually is that they begin to really just want to be with the person who does have good communication skills. And so as a result, that parent with really good communication skills is able to say to their child, it sounds like it's really hard for you when you're with your whoever the other parent. And it sounds as though what's going on for you isn't important to them, that they don't ever really want to see, hear, and understand what your perspective is. So now you're giving the child an opportunity to talk about, because you're providing empathy for how hard that must be for them, to say, yeah, it's really hard. The other parent it doesn't seem like really interested in my perspective. Again, other than providing empathy and understanding for what it's like for them, we can try to broach these subjects with the other partner and have conversations coming from this place of, would you be willing to have a conversation about like problem solving when the kids are at your house, and invite and open the door for conversation about that. It's if we can lower the temperature and have the most constructive co-parenting relationship where it is like in service to the best possible relationship that the kids can have with you, me, each other, that would serve all of us. I mean, those are the kinds of conciliatory conversations that really can never be about, I'm really worried about the way you're doing this. Like that would be a door closer. It would have to be more in line with, I've just noticed, like, it seems as though little Johnny is really struggling with a lot of feelings that percolate inside, whether they're your house, my house, our house, and I'm just trying to figure it out. What do you think? Like opening up these opportunities for shared conversation.
Yeah. No, it definitely is true and it works for parents that are open to it. But a lot of the people that I talk to, they control situations. They're involved in domestic violence or coercive control, and they would just shift the blame on the other parent. So it's a fine line.
It's an incredibly difficult situation where I think for for the person who is aware they're dealing with someone who's not well, right? They're dealing with someone who's not well, that has really toxic, dysfunctional communication style that is harmful for everyone in that vicinity. And the only person who can ever change it is the person themselves. Right. So then everything just becomes about how do I mitigate all of these situations so that I can keep myself and my kids as healthy as possible when in the midst of it is someone who has a legal right to continue to have contact. Now, if it's really, really bad, you can obviously use whatever means are available to you to limit that contact to the absolute as little as possible.
Now, what exactly is guidance approach to parenting? Can you explain the core pillars and, in a simple way parents can apply?
Absolutely. So the guidance approach to parenting does not use rewards and punishments. That's the most basic foundation.
Okay.
And it uses, instead of using rewards and punishment, it's not just about behavioralism.
Okay.
A behavioralist is concerned with this bad behavior, and you have to stop that behavior. Where we, as a guidance parent, look at the behavior and go, yeah, of course, we'd love that behavior to go away, but what's the behavior really there for? Why is it there? We become more curious about the bad behaviors, and we literally have it in our head. God, I wonder if that's the tragic expression of an unmet need. Is that the tragic expression of an unmet need? I think it's a tragic expression of an unmet need. All right. What's the underlying need? Exactly. That has catalyzed these big feelings. And now this person has all of these behaviors that are being driven by these feelings. So with that as the mindset, then it's really not just about, I want that behavior to disappear. It's about, I want this child's needs to be met, at which point the behavior just disappears because it was just the light on the dashboard. So a guidance approach has that huge shift away from behavioralism, which is based on, I'm going to reward or punish you to get that behavior to go away, to, wow, this is a really interesting behavior. What's the underlying unmet need? And then in our mind, we have a framework. We use Maslow's hierarchy. So if the audience isn't familiar with Maslow basically had 5 levels.
Our needs. Right.
Yeah. So the primary needs are food, air, water, and sleep. And honestly, a lot of time, the hangry, tired child.
Right.
And all you have to do really is get them to go to bed. And then they wake up and they're little angels.
Sure.
And we just met that underlying unmet need by giving them a meal and getting them to go to bed. So then the next level is psychological safety. And so in this community, I think a lot of times that is a primary unmet need, the need for psychological safety. Now, in a lot of communities, it could be as simple as a child going to school and being bullied, or having a breakdown with friendships, or having a teacher who embarrassed them, or having a playground situation that's not conducive to happiness. And so all of those could be psychological safety. And we have to figure out how to address that problem, let's say at school. And you really have to address the underlying unmet need. It's more important to focus on that than the tragic expression of the unmet need. So then we move up. Okay, it's not that. Well, then what else could it be? So then we move to the belonging needs. And so that's the next level that emerged. And so Maslow would say, well, yeah, is it a breakdown? Did their best friend say, I hate you and you're not invited to the birthday party? Or is it a belonging need that they're not able to meet at home with their siblings? You open up your mind. And it's not just belonging needs. It's also the need for autonomy. So autonomy it's an extraordinary need, and it's not really dealt with. Maslow didn't really talk that much about it, but subsequent to his work, we do. And the need for autonomy has been found across almost every species. And that includes children. But again, now we're back to this mindset of, really, are children allowed to have autonomy? Are you sure about that? Well, in a lot of families, no. And so any of the expressions of autonomy, which are things like mastery and choice, when a child asserts that, they're made to feel as though there's something wrong with them. They shouldn't have done that to begin with. So is that what's going on for this child? Are their needs for autonomy and choice not being met? Right. And I would say most of the time, yes, that would be true. So if you have that child who has really strong autonomy needs, one of the keys would be able to learn to say to them, hey, I know you'd really like choice around this. So would you be willing to do this now and do that later? Could we just switch the order on this? Would that be something you're willing to do?
Right.
And if you give them the choice to do it rather than insisting that they do it, it's shocking the number of times that they would say yes, because they feel that sense of autonomous. I had a choice in this.
Right.
And they will choose it. If you try to make them do it, they will show you that you can't make them do anything.
Sure. That's
and they
pretty
will draw
normal,
the line.
typical behavior.
Very typical, but a belonger may not risk your disapproval. An autonomous child will.
Now, when a parent feels guilt for like a past reaction from something, how do they repair that trust with that child?
Yeah, perfect. I mean, it's so powerful when a parent can go to their child and say, I've been thinking about our interaction. I really, really feel badly about how that played out. I feel so bad. I just want to apologize.
Yeah.
I would love a do-over. It's a subject that we do really need to talk about. And the way I handled it the other day, I'm not proud of. And so if we could readdress this situation, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. I know for me, my son passed away and I always have these moments of things that I wish I didn't do or didn't say. And I remember, right before he died, probably like a week before, we were outside playing and I had these like solar lights outside my driveway and he took one out and broke one. I don't even know. There was glass on the floor. And I just remember getting so angry and I just remember yelling and he looked at me and just started crying and he ran in the house and ran into his room. And I just felt so terrible. Obviously things like that happen. Kids make mistakes. Incidents happen. Glass breaks. And I was probably overwhelmed by other things that didn't involve him that made me react that way. But I just remember, and I still do to this day, feeling so sorry. And I remember I went in his room and I said, Greyson, I'm really sorry. Mommy didn't mean to yell that much. It's okay. I cleaned it up and went on from there. But to this day, it still affects me. And then I wish I said things and did things better. But I am glad that I did apologize.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And with the practice of being the presence, as we were talking about earlier, and recognizing that there's something in you, this part of you that still has regret, right? That if we're in the spirit of being bigger than that's something, and we have the ability to just sort of like imagine being present to that part and just sensing how it would like me to be with it. I wonder how I could be with this something in me that's still aching and still feels so much regret. And as we see ourselves as the presence of that healing balm, there's nothing out there, right? There's no out there. It's all here. And as we can turn toward that something and be with it, communicating like this, I'm just going to be with you, this part of me, for as long as you need me to be. And I also want to just communicate that you can be just the way you are for as long as you need to be. Like this deep sense of compassion that there's nothing wrong, that there's this something in me that's still the way it is, so that we communicate 100% self-acceptance. It's so powerful to not make ourselves wrong.
Sure, absolutely.
And to be with that something that is there just the way it is. And it can be that way for as long as it needs to be. And I'm going to be present to it. Yeah, that's an incredible, powerful healing balm.
Absolutely. So now let's get into
anybody who has that feeling, right? Who's got their own story. I think we all have a story. We all have that time when we just blew it so spectacularly and we look back and think, oh my God, if I could only, right? If I could only. And those are our chances to get bigger than what's bugging us and to be present to that part of us in a way in which it feels so loved and accepted by us.
Now let's talk about what you do, your services and whatnot. How can our listeners find you?
Yeah. So I have a website, consciousparentingrevolution.com.
Okay.
And if you go there, we have a family lifeline free community. So you can get a lifeline if you need one by just joining the community. And I'm in and out of the community all the time, looking to see if there's any like lifelines I can provide for somebody. I also have a bunch of resources on the website as well that people are welcome to avail themselves of. Freeparentingbook.com is where you can download 7 strategies to keep your relationship with your kids from hitting the boiling point.
Great.
Amazon bestseller. So I give that
I'll put that in the notes.
Yeah. So please feel free to go there and download that. And for people who are really looking for more support, I have a 90-day family reset where I work with people who joined that training. And every week I get on the group coaching call and we work together to have all of the skills that are available really implemented and deeply integrated into someone's experience so that they can be very...
Is that a group like session? And is it weekly or?
Every week.
Every week. Okay.
Yeah, every week. And that my experience with all the skills and developing the competency and so forth is that it doesn't happen overnight.
Of course. Everything's a process.
Everything's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And having a coach and having a community that's very supportive and deeply caring one makes a huge difference. And so
Absolutely.
invite anyone who needs that kind of support to please reach out.
Do you do one-on-one sessions with people as well?
I do. Yeah. And then there's always one-on-one for people who prefer that. Yeah. Over Zoom.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So you can anywhere in the world
Exactly.
and still benefit.
Absolutely. And I lived overseas for 35 years. So a lot of my clients are coming from Asia.
Oh, wow. Now, what's your background? I'm curious, but before you said you started all this because you were a parent and you wanted, figure out ways, but what was your background before that?
Yeah. So I'd gone to law school and then I trained as a mediator and then I became a commodities trader and I lived in Hong Kong and traded non-ferrous basically for the whole world. So I'd studied Chinese in university and I speak Chinese pretty fluently. So
wow,
I was doing that and I ended up basically trading commodities on my own account for, 30, 40 years. But what really compelled me and what I loved the most was these relationships. I had a brother who died by suicide when I was growing up. And I think that my parents were divorced and each of them remarried. In fact, my mom and dad were married. They didn't divorce, but they each had marriages that failed. And so it was a his, mine, and ours situation. And my dad and my brother did not get along. And just the heartbreak and all of those painful explosions and terrible situations and really just feeling if there's anything I can do on this earth while I'm here to not have that happen again to anyone. There are so many better ways to communicate and to integrate and to welcome than what I got to witness.
Sure. And I mean, and most of us, we learn from our parents how to communicate, right?
Yeah.
So
it was bad. I would
got to break the cycle.
Yes, exactly. I would come home after I'd started training and I had my program and I would try to teach it to my parents who had absolutely no interest. So yeah, it was just recognizing that I can only do what any of us can do.
Right.
There has to be people on the other end who are interested in the transformation.
You have to want to better yourself.
Absolutely. Have to want to. I trained with Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of the Center for Nonviolent Communication and Restorative Justice. And that was incredible, sitting at the feet of truly an extraordinary gift to bring forward just that deep nonviolent communication.
I would love to see more of that happen. As you know, I deal with a lot of parents that have suffered tragedy. My child's father killed him. So nonviolent tactics would have been nice. So I urge everyone to try to get all of that for your home. Now, for a parent listening right now who feels maybe just overwhelmed, exhausted, defeated, we all have that. What is one hopeful message or maybe first step that they should take?
Yeah. Mindset is so critical, and keeping our mindset at a frequency, if I can use that word. In meditation, we talk about prana.
Okay.
And so our prana really is it's like if you can imagine yourself as a vibration, and depending on your prana, the vibration, the frequency that you're on one radio station or you're on another. So the greatest way to help ourselves change the station we're on is to increase our prana. And the way to increase our prana is to develop a breathing and meditation practice. So if you don't have one of those, then that would be my advice before I would even start working around mindset and communication skills or anything else, is that vagus nerve needs to be healed and the energy needs to be raised so that there's positivity that's coming because you've raised your energy, your breath. You're actually just choosing to take care of yourself.
Seems basic enough.
So basic and so important.
Right. This has been a very powerful conversation. So thanks so much for sharing with our listeners all of this. You remind us that communication, can be a tool of safety, clarity, love, especially for children. And when we model emotional intelligence, we teach our children their voice matters and their needs matter. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'll put all of your contact information in the show notes. I want every parent to open the lines of communication more.
Yeah. Thanks, Ali. Love what you're doing. Appreciate you.
I appreciate it. And thank you for listening to Grey Minds Think Alike. If there's someone that you want to hear from on this podcast, please feel free to send me an email. Or if you would like to be a guest, please reach out at graysonschoice.org. If you would like to continue to hear our podcast, please consider donating at graysonschoice.org. Any amount helps to fund our mission to help protect our children.